Hi, I'm Joe Morrison, founder and CEO of Razor Sharp Consulting and creator of the Donor Finder System. Welcome to the sixth of a 9-part video series that will take you through the process of creating a donor funnel, which is a step-by-step system that will help you attract, engage, and convert prospects into donors. The FastLane's Donor Highway is the last module in the engagement level, and it's one of the most important to understand. What we're going to look at today is a one-page system that uses 5 fast lanes to get donors zooming down the highway and straight into your fundraising campaign. Most small nonprofit leaders approach their work as if they were drifting in an open ocean on a rowboat without oars, looking for the next donor, short on time, short on help. You're always in a reactive mode, letting the winds sort of take you where they will, working on the wrong things or even the right things at the wrong time. So that's why you get overwhelmed. That's why you get stressed or become hopeless, because until you can get in the driver's seat and steer your nonprofit to exactly where you want your nonprofit to be, you're always going to be a victim of what happens to you. And this system helps combat that tendency and gives you a clear roadmap to success. It takes you from drifting to driving. And when you're driving, you have a clear path. It might take a little concentration and be a bit challenging to stay on the road at times, but you are focused. Every decision you make, everything you do, even if you only have 10 minutes a day or 1 hour a week, you're focusing on that specific outcome. The destination is the what, and when you're driving, you focus on the how. Your destination is where you want to go. Driving allows you to stay focused on how to get there. And it's good to be in the driver's seat. That means you get to decide the route that you're going to take. I chose the highway scenario because I think it represents what most of us want. A highway with fast lanes to success. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just have one fast lane to success one time in your life? Well, I'm going to show you 5 fast lanes. That highway where all the lanes have your name only at the top and where you can just gun it at top speed and get to your destination in no time. It's what I wish I had when I was struggling with how to raise larger and larger sums of money and how to find new donors for a project or a campaign that I was working on. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What are those lanes? What do they look like? And what do they do? That's what this Fast Lanes framework does for you. You can see that I've identified 5 fast lanes to bringing in new donors online. They are ads, emails, pages, as in landing pages or website pages, outreach, and offline efforts. Yeah, sometimes you need to do things offline to support your online efforts. And what this plan shows is that all of these things are integrated so that one thing triggers another, which triggers another, which triggers another. So it's not only integrated, it's also coordinated so that everything supports the movement of prospects down the highway to the final destination, which of course is becoming a donor. I would hazard a guess that you've probably never seen such a simple, easy-to-use system of donor identification and cultivation. But before we get into each of those areas, I want to show you something related to the success factors of your fast lanes. What I want you to notice is that only 20% of your success comes from things like your traffic source or a donor magnet or even your videos or email solicitations. It's important to get those things right, but only 20% of your success is dependent upon using them. A full 80% of your success comes from getting the foundational elements right. That is, targeting your perfect donor, creating the proper message to resonate with your potential donors, and of course the actual ask or the solicitation process, which we'll learn a little bit about in another session. The point is, make sure that you get this stuff right. Spend more time on the foundational elements than you do on the other things. And when you start to implement your fundraising funnel using the tactics that we're about to look at, you'll be so far ahead of the game you won't believe it. It'll definitely make life easier for you when you're ready to launch, and you won't have to go back and try to figure things out later when you're up against a deadline. So let's look at the first fast lane, advertising. Ads are what we talked about previously in the Google Gas segment, or if you've watched the Facebook Fast Track training. There's really no mystery here. It's pretty straightforward. Ads drive traffic to your website. The thing I want you to remember, however, is that ads are like potato chips. You can't have just one. The more, the merrier. There's really no simpler way to say it than this. The more ads you have, the more people you're going to reach. Why do you think Times Square looks the way it does? Those advertisers understand the basic principle. In the case of advertising, more is better. So let's look at the first lane of our framework up close. Remember, ads drive traffic to your website or landing page, which in turn triggers action. Now, let's say that I've created and placed an ad on Google for my donor magnet. I might also create another ad that drives them to a different landing page, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, each ad doesn't necessarily have to take me to a different landing page. I could, for example, create 6 versions of a single ad that takes me to my donor magnet page. Or I could create 6 versions of a single ad that takes me to my first video page. Or I could create 6 versions of a single ad that takes me directly to a donation page. No matter where your ad is directed, that is what page it lands on, I want you to make several versions of that ad for each page that you create. Does that make sense? I think you'll understand better as I show you how each of these lanes works together. So let's look at your second fast lane, email. If you stop to think about it for a moment, you'll realize that email is your contact gold. Sending an email is an easy way for you to sort of surreptitiously begin the cultivation process for your potential donors. Once you have their permission, you can send them just about anything. Advertisers tell us that you need to repeat a message 7 times before someone is ready to buy. In fundraising, we found that on average, you need to have between 10 and 12 what's called points of contact before someone makes a donation. That doesn't mean you simply need to repeat the same thing a dozen times, but you do need to have as many points of contact with your prospect as possible. Email is the perfect medium to have those points of contact. The question I always get is, well, what should I send? There are a million things that you could send, quite frankly. You could simply send them regular updates on your organizational news. You could send them birthday wishes. You can ask their advice. You can provide an update on a previous contribution they may have made. You can send an interesting news item that you came across. You can send them a personal story of how a person in your organization achieved something great or overcame an obstacle. You can send them an invitation to go to lunch or to meet for coffee. You can send them an email to bounce a creative idea off of them. You can share marketing or enrollment material with them, or you can inform them if there's been some sort of problem within your organization. And the best thing about email for the nonprofit leader especially, it's free. And you can automate those points of contact by setting up automated emails based on triggers. Now, the problem with most all of these things is that it doesn't necessarily, each of these things by themselves don't necessarily keep the prospect engaged, nor does it move them down the path to become a donor. And that's what you want your email fast lane to do. So let's look at that in action. Let's say you've created an ad that gets someone to land on your donor magnet page, and they subscribe. Well, now you have their email. This can be a trigger, if you want, to send an automated email back to them. That is, if they land on your donor magnet page, you can automatically send them an email. Now, rather than just sending them something like a PDF file of your donor magnet as an attachment, what I want you to do is to send them an email that forces them to go to another landing page on your website in order to get that donor magnet or to get that download. Does that make sense? That way, they aren't let off the hook. They have to stay engaged almost whether they want to or not. Now, if they take an action on that landing page, they get another email, and the process continues. Now, let's say they don't take an action on your landing page. Well, that can also trigger an email to be sent. And it might be slightly different in its content, but the process will be the same. Engage them and move them down the line. Your emails are simply reminders that help people get unstuck. Now, the P5 copy strategy can help in the sequencing of your emails. We'll cover this in detail in the solicitation solution training, but for now, I want you to know that there will be a process for delivering the messages that move people down your email fast lane. You'll address the problem first, the program second, provide proof of your results next, then ping them to make sure that they're involved. Then offer your promotion, which in your case will be a donation request. Throughout the process, you'll want to make your prospect think, feel, and act in very specific ways. It's a process that really works like a charm. So let's move on to the next fast lane called pages. No, I don't want you to tear up your favorite books or your magazines. Pages refer to your website, which will have landing pages that are designed for a specific task. Think about it this way. When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, they weren't greeted by a tour guide with a name badge, right? They had to go out and explore on their own to discover what joys and what challenges were in this new world. But imagine if they did have a guide, someone to show them where to set up camp, where to fish, where to hunt, the best places to get fresh water, how to avoid the Indians, where the best trees were for building a fort. That's what you need to do for your visitors. Don't leave them to their own devices, which will just slow them down and make them want to head back home. Instead, take them by the hand and show them the places and things you want them to see. Take them on a journey. Avoid the bad places and highlight the exciting and new things they might never find on their own. So how do you do that on a website? Well, your ad, of course, gets them in the door. From there, your emails automate the process and move them from page to page to page to page to page, with the ultimate goal, of course, of having them make a donation, right? If you haven't set up those pages in advance, you'll have nowhere for them to go, no clear path for them to follow, and they'll be like pilgrims wandering around in the wilderness. If you follow the structure in this framework, you'll want to create 7 pages. The first is where your prospect signs up to get your donor magnet. They are directed to another landing page to download it and hear a little video of you explaining what's in the download. Then, after they have the download, they will automatically be sent an email series inviting them to watch 3 videos. The first dealing with the first unique step in the transformation process. The second, explaining the second step. And the third, of course, explaining the third step and asking for a gift. The donate page allows them to make the gift. And then they'll be directed to a thank you page, which of course should feature a thank you note or a video, even better, from a client or perhaps even another donor. You can certainly have more landing pages than this. This is, I think, the minimum that you want to have. You might be able to shorten it by 1. I wouldn't go any shorter than that, but you could have more if you want, okay? Just don't drag it on forever and ever and ever. As a matter of fact, each donor magnet that you create could have its own series of landing pages. But as always, start with 1 set of pages, refine them, get them working the way they should, measure them, and then adjust them as needed. You can always add more pages later once the first set of pages is working the way you want it to work. Now, I want to talk for a moment about your outreach fast lane. This is where you reach out, usually as a result of someone taking action or asking a question on your website. This doesn't happen as frequently as other things happen, like emails or ads, but when strategically placed, outreach efforts, such as a telephone call, can yield amazing results. What I want you to remember about your outreach fast lane is this. It's the one place in this whole structure where you can actually touch a prospect, at least by voice. It allows you to personally connect on a level that's far deeper and more meaningful than anything else found in the automated system. So it's important to use your telephone outreach very, very carefully. Notice where your outreach efforts are placed in the system. They're in the middle of other activities, or more accurately, they follow or sometimes precede other activities. And let me give you an example. Let's say that someone visits your landing page to download your donor magnet. However, they fail to download it after 2 days of visiting the page. You can set up triggers in your email system to tell you that they've not downloaded the magnet. And this trigger can send an email to the prospect reminding them to download the magnet, like we've already talked about. But it can also send you a prompt to make a call to the prospect in order to encourage them to download the magnet and perhaps even to offer help too, if they want it or need it. It can also be a good opportunity for you to answer questions, build trust, and to move the prospect along in the cultivation cycle. In a small nonprofit, this is great. This is a great project for volunteers or potentially even board members because, let's face it, you're probably not going to want to call every prospect that doesn't download the magnet, right? But maybe key ones, important ones that you think you should follow up with. But opening up a conversation with your prospect is one of the best things that you can possibly do to foster a potential donation. Or let's say that someone actually makes a donation on your website. Wouldn't that be a wonderful time for a volunteer or a board member to call them and simply thank them? I've seen this process work wonders with donors. And let me give you a personal example of how thank you calls make a huge difference in your fundraising efforts. When I was with Habitat for Humanity, I instituted a process of calling everyone who made a gift to the organization, no matter how large or how small the gift. And usually this was done by board members. But being the kind of person who likes to set the example, I made it a practice of calling donors myself, too, every week. And on one such call, I reached a man named Thomas, and I thanked him for his $100 gift, which it turns out he had been making monthly for about a year. He told me no other organization that he ever supported ever bothered to call him and thank him. And he was practically in shock that I would do it over, in his words, a small gift, like $100. I told him every gift was important. And of course, we ended the conversation in a very pleasant manner. Well, about a week later, we got a letter from Thomas stating that he was so impressed with our call to him that he decided to give a little more to our organization because we clearly cared about other people's money. And enclosed was a check for $10,000, which Thomas continued to give every year for the next 5 years. No lie, true story. If you take nothing else away from this part of the process, take this. Your calls to a donor or a prospective donor can have a significant impact on your bottom line because you never know who you're going to be talking to. Let's move on to the last fast lane, okay? Offline marketing. Now, I don't want you to think of your offline fundraising efforts or think that all of your offline fundraising efforts will fall under this category in this chart. Clearly, there are many other fundraising activities like grants and special events that don't really fit here, and they aren't supposed to. We're talking only about your online fundraising efforts here. And when it comes to your offline fundraising efforts, they always need to support your online fundraising efforts. And what I mean by that is that you always need to make it easy for people to give. So when you have an event or you publish a brochure or you submit a grant, always promote your online fundraising portals. Give people options. They can mail in a check or they can go online and use a credit card. Fundraising is so much more than direct mail, and although it's still important in nonprofits, the future is online. So always point people online and drive traffic to your website and to your landing pages. In the case of our offline fast lane, we're basically talking about direct mail, of course. And what I want you to notice is where the direct mail pieces originate. That is, what triggers an offline direct mail piece. It should never just be random. Make sure that there's a reason to send someone a piece of mail. This particular fast lane works the same way as your outreach fast lane. Let's say that someone visits your landing page. Even if you send them an email or call them, there's no reason why you can't also send them perhaps a welcome letter, which subtly encourages them to visit the next landing page or to watch a video. Or after a telephone call, you may want to follow up with a direct mail piece that encourages people to make a donation either offline or online. And of course, after someone makes a donation, you'll want to send them thank you and, of course, a receipt. Usually this is done through the mail. You can also do it through email, but I encourage you to always send a physical direct mail piece after someone's made a gift. So that's how your offline work can support your online efforts. You might want to adjust this framework a bit to suit your specific needs, and that's fine. Maybe you'll send more direct mail or make more calls more often, or maybe you'll do those things at different times than I've shown here. And I encourage you to do that. Make this process your own. Customize it. Test it. Find what works for you in your unique situation. And then just go for it. Now, before we finish up, let's spend a moment talking about your Fastlane incentives or your premiums. What are incentives and premiums? Well, think about them like prizes. They're something unexpected that you sort of win for taking an action, like winning a stuffed animal at a fair, or perhaps for not taking action, like a condolence prize. Both, however, are meant to spur you along, and both occur toward the end of the sale, so to speak. An incentive can really just be about anything. It can be anything you can think of. Many nonprofits use products like mugs or pens or coasters as incentives or premiums. And very often they slap their logo, of course, on it to reinforce their brand. Now, while incentives and premiums can be very valuable and can be a good tool to use, be careful not to overuse them. Use them sparingly and strategically. There's no research that I know of that proves incentives or premiums even work to get people to make a donation. But what they do is inject a point of contact and give you a reason to reach out to people. And that's important. Let's say you decide to inject an incentive after someone has, say, watched video 3, but has not yet made a donation. You might offer those people a gift as a way of encouraging them to make the leap and make a gift. You can also inject a premium after someone makes a gift, that is, after they've already done it, as a special thank you to the donor, and of course to reinforce your brand. Just be careful about doing either of these things, because donors have really become very savvy and often question the costs associated with providing an incentive or a premium. And many would rather have you spend the money that you use to create the gift on your programs or services. So don't go overboard with your premiums and gifts. That could really backfire. But just think about whether it makes sense to do it, and then have a rationale for it that you could easily explain to a donor, because at some point in the future, you might have to. You might have to explain why you spent $2 on that premium of a donor's money. Remember, Our purpose with all of the fast lanes, of course, is to move your prospects down the highway. There always has to be movement. Stagnation is death. Don't allow your prospect to get stuck. That's the beauty of this framework. It gives you 5 options, all coordinated to always move your prospects down the production line. Now it's time for you to get to work and complete your fast lanes worksheet. Map out your strategy for your 5 fast lanes for each step in your initial donor funnel. So for your donor magnet, decide what the topic of your page will be, what email you will use to promote it, what ad or ads you're going to use, what outreach and offline activities that you're going to undertake. And of course, then list your metrics, your costs, and the value for each step. It's really important to know your numbers, by the way. Remember, you can't expect what you don't inspect. So be sure to inspect your fast lanes regularly. And then, of course, do the same thing for each of the pages in your framework. So that's your 5 fast lanes to success. This proven schematic leverages your communication modes to drive prospects down your highway with more efficiency and speed than you've ever had before. The approach ensures that your prospects get exposed to the right message in the right place at the right time. And hopefully the system is simple for you to comprehend and you'll easily be able to launch it quickly. That's my goal, to get you out there, get you moving, get you doing things fast. Next, we're going to move on to the top tier of the Donor Finder system. Now that we're attracting and engaging prospects, we're going to begin to understand how to convert those prospects into donors. The Persuasion Infuser will allow us to understand what psychologists have known for quite some time, and that is that there is a science to persuasion. And they've identified 6 key elements of persuasion, or what they call shortcuts, that readers will be compelled to respond to, even if they don't know why. And the more elements included in your messages, the higher chance you have of converting a visitor to a donor. But before we do that, make sure you download your Fast Lanes framework and fill it out. It really will set you up for success. Investing the time now will free up your time later when thousands of prospects are flowing through your pages and your automated system is in high gear. And of course, as always, please voice your concerns or your comments in the Donor Finder System community and let me know what you thought about the Fast Lane session. I honor you for taking the time to complete this video training and for learning how to grow your nonprofit. I look forward to our next time together.